If you're like many of my students, you might be wondering whether the SAT even matters. I know a lot of students are frustrated by the entire standardized prep process, and this is a question I get often, and it comes in several forms. So I'm going to answer a couple of those forms of Does the SAT Matter today. Before we get started though, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. All you have to do is click the subscribe button below this video. It's really fun. And then go to SupertutorTV.com/subscribe and subscribe to our newsletter at SupertutorTV.com. We'll keep you up to date on everything awesome that we're doing here at SupertutorTV.com, including new YouTube videos, new products, new books, new anything that we've got going on. You're gonna hear about it first. So go do that. Okay, so does the SAT matter? I'm going to talk about 3 different forms of this question, okay? The first question that I often get from students is, does the SAT matter? AKA, I have a really good GPA, but my SAT score bites, right? Or the opposite, I have a really crappy GPA, but my SAT score is awesome. So does it matter? Most of the time it does matter, but there are over 200 colleges and universities in the United States that have what they call a test flexible policy or a test optional policy. At test optional schools, what that means is that you actually can choose whether you want to submit your SAT or ACT score, or whether you want to just skip it all together and just send everything else that you would with your college application, meaning your grades, GPA, your activities, your essays, all that kind of good stuff. And just apply based on those elements and cross your fingers and hope for the best. When it comes to test flexible, that might mean that you might not need the SAT, but you might need AP scores. But let's say your SAT score was really terrible. Well, then you can kind of weasel your way out of that by doing a different test of some sort. And that's going to vary from school to school what that test flexible means. So you're going to have to go and look up the policy of that particular school if that's something you're interested in. So what are those colleges and what are those schools? Well, a lot more of them are what we would call national liberal arts colleges. Liberal arts colleges are usually smaller colleges. They often only offer undergraduate work, and so they're called like a college as opposed to a university. And that's in contrast to national universities. A university typically has undergraduate and graduate students, has a research-oriented environment of some sort. That's usually what distinguishes a national university. So they're a little bit different, usually according to size and also according to the student body, whether there's a graduate student population or not. When it comes to national liberal arts colleges, a heck of a lot of them that are very well respected and well known do have more test optional or test flexible policies. Some of note, even within sort of the top 20 or so, we've got Middlebury College, Bowdoin College in Maine, Colby College, Hamilton College, Smith College, Wesleyan University, Colorado College, Bates College, Bryn Mawr. So some of those colleges you may have heard of, and like I said, those are smaller liberal arts colleges, and all of those either have a test flexible or a test optional kind of thing. When it comes to national universities, again, we don't have nearly as many of these, but some highlights from, say, the top 50 or so, 50 or 60. Wake Forest in North Carolina, University of Rochester, Brandeis University, New York University, University of Texas at Austin, and George Washington University in DC, GW. Those are some of the more well-known or well-respected colleges on the national university level that will either have a test flexible policy or a test optional policy. So that's a little taste of the kinds of colleges, at least at the top of these lists, that are going to let you get away with not taking the SAT or the ACT. Yes, it is possible to go to a good school and not take the thing at all. But as you can see, there's a lot of universities that you have heard of that aren't on these lists. So in that sense, does the SAT matter? Well, it depends on where you're applying. But for the majority of students, some schools that they want to apply to are going to require the SAT, and then you know what? It does matter. The next question that I'm actually going to answer, besides does the SAT matter, is does the SAT matter, aka how much does it matter compared to my GPA? If I have a great GPA, can I have a crappy test score? If I have a great test score, can I have a crappy GPA? That kind of thing. And the truth is it varies from school to school how much the SAT matters beyond this kind of a list. But I will say, if you're applying to a competitive university, usually it does matter. some. For the most part, in my experience as a tutor and a college admissions consultant, what I have found is that there are more colleges out there that will reward people with great GPAs and meh test scores than there are colleges out there that will reward people with awesome test scores and crappy GPAs. Generally, if you're going to be in one boat or the other, it's better to be in the boat with the great GPA than it is to be in the boat with the great test score and the crappy GPA. That being said, it really does vary school by school. And some of it also comes down to context. For example, if you go to a school in a neighborhood where most of the people can't afford private tutoring and things like that, you're going to be coming from a context in which most people aren't prepping for this test like crazy. If you go to Exeter or some prep school on the East Coast, most of your peers are going to be doing intensive prep for the SAT or the ACT. And so your test scores are expected to reflect that kind of preparation. So if you look at it in context, when you're coming from a hyper-competitive context, then I think the test scores may matter even more. And when you're coming from a context that doesn't have the access to test prep resources and things like that, I think sometimes your test scores can matter a little bit less because they're looking at you in context of this place where most of the test scores are pretty low and at least you have a really high GPA, so then maybe that can balance things out. The other great thing about having a great GPA and a so-so test score is oftentimes, so long as it's not November of your senior year, you can still do something about your test score, meaning you can study and you can improve it and you can do better. And if you did horribly on the SAT, well, heck, you can go and take the ACT. If you're going to do that, go to SupertutorTV.com. We've got free prep resources for the ACT there. If you click on courses, we've got a free course that has over 10 hours of video content. Go check it out. It's a great place to start your ACT prep journey. And then finally, there's another question that I'm going to answer as well. And that is not does the SAT matter, but should the SAT matter? The answer that I have to that is probably not as much as it does. There's an interesting study that was recently done by the former dean of admissions for Bates College, William Hiss. And he led this study, and what the study did is it tracked the data, the grades and graduation rates of students who applied to these colleges with test optional policies. And what they did is they took a group of students who applied to the test optional school who did not submit their test scores, and then they compared those students to students who did submit their test scores. Now we're going to assume that self-selectively, the students who did not submit their test scores probably didn't do as well on these tests, right? And the students who did submit probably did okay. And so they felt more confident submitting those. Now we don't know that for sure, but that's something we can probably infer. Here's what they found though. They found basically that there was a very, very small difference in graduation rate and GPA of these two groups of students, meaning that the kids that they accepted that didn't submit any scores versus the kids that they accepted that did submit scores, whichever basket you happen to be in, everybody performed about the same. There was a small difference, 0.05% of a GPA point off for those who did not submit. They were a little bit lower. And also those who did not submit graduated at a rate of 0.6% less. So that's less than 1% difference in graduation rate, which probably is not very statistically significant, okay? So the point that this study basically is making is that GPA is a much better predictor of whether students are going to succeed in college, and all the other factors, maybe the soft factors, maybe essays, maybe all the other things that colleges are taking into account when they let you into their college, that when colleges don't have test scores, they do just about as good of a job of letting people in as they do when they have test scores. The other thing that's kind of interesting that this study found is that students who had high GPAs but low test scores still performed pretty well in college in terms of graduation rate and GPA. But students who had the reverse situation, high test scores and low GPA, did not perform as well in college overall. And what they found essentially is that GPA was a much better predictor of success in college than test scores were. Now, whether colleges and their admissions policies are going to reflect the reality of this study, well, that's another matter that colleges are going to take into their own hands. And the truth is not all of them do respond to studies like this. So like it or not, these tests really do still matter for you, even if they shouldn't matter as much as they do. So what can you do about that? Well, you can spend more time here on SupertutorTV.com. If you are going to be taking these tests and you do want to apply to colleges that don't happen to be on these test flexible or test optional lists, then I would encourage you to check out some of our videos. We have a bunch of SAT videos here. If you're prepping for the ACT, we also have a free prep course on our website at SupertutorTV.com. And that's about it for today. So I hope you guys liked this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. And again, good luck if you're prepping for these tests, or good luck if you're trying to find a college that will let you out of it. And I will see you guys next time on SupertutorTV. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.